Let me tell you something about humans. No, seriously, stop laughing and listen, because what I witnessed 3 cycles ago still keeps me awake during rest periods. My name is Krill, and I served as combat evaluator for the Galactic Coalition's elite training facility on Station Zerin. Notice I said served past tense, because after what happened with the human girl, well, let's just say my entire understanding of reality needed some aggressive recalibration. The facility prided itself on breaking candidates. We are talking about the toughest warriors from 73 species, beings who could bench press a shuttle, survive vacuum exposure, regenerate limbs. Our failure rate, 92%. We did not train soldiers, we forged legends, and we absolutely did not accept anyone under the age of maturity for their species. Then Commander Vexlor, in his infinite wisdom, decided to prove a point about human fragility by allowing a human adolescent into our program. Her name was Riley Hartwell. She was 16 Earth years old, and she looked like she would break if you sneezed too hard in her direction. I remember standing in the observation deck with my fellow evaluators when she walked into the orientation chamber. Thin limbs, no natural armor, no visible weapons, no enhanced musculature. She wore their standard military attire, hair pulled back in some sort of tail configuration, and she was smiling. Smiling, like she had just arrived at a recreational facility instead of a place specifically designed to crush spirits and shatter bones. 60 seconds, Vexler announced, his mandibles clicking with amusement. I wager she will not last 60 seconds in the first trial. The other evaluators erupted in what passed for laughter among our various species. 60 seconds was generous, honestly. The Krelix beside me, a mountain of scales and bad attitude named Gorith, made a hissing sound that translated to agreement. 30. Maximum. Look at her, she is built like a twig creature from the swamp moons. Now I should explain what the first trial involved. We called it the Gauntlet, a straightforward test of basic survival instinct. Candidates entered a corridor approximately 200 meters long, filled with randomized obstacles, automated defense systems, and environmental hazards. The record holder, a Tharaxian warbreed named Krulix, had done it in 2 minutes and 17 seconds. That particular individual could punch through reinforced steel and had skin like organic armor plating. Riley Hartwell weighed maybe 60 kilograms and looked like a strong breeze would relocate her. Then she winked. Arrogant little creature, Vexlor muttered. Initiate trial. The entrance barrier dissolved, and Riley walked into the gauntlet. Not ran, not charged, just walked like she was taking a casual stroll through some Earth park. The first obstacle activated immediately. A series of pneumatic rams designed to test reflexes and spatial awareness. They shot out from the walls at randomized intervals with enough force to crack ribs on most species. Riley tilted her head, almost lazy in the movement, and the first ram missed her face by centimeters. She did not even flinch. The second one came from her left. She ducked under it, while simultaneously stepping forward. Third, fourth, fifth, she moved through them like water flowing around rocks, each motion minimal and precise. Lucky, Gorath grunted. The pattern generation must be malfunctioning. Except it was not malfunctioning. I checked. The pattern was actually more aggressive than standard calibration. She was just that good at reading trajectories. 20 seconds in, she reached the thermal section where the floor alternated between freezing and superheated panels. The pattern was invisible, randomized every 3 seconds, designed to force candidates into painful trial and error. Vexlor's bioluminescent patches flared with irritation. The automated defense grid will stop her. The defense grid was our pride and joy, a combination of energy barriers, projectile launchers, and pulse weapons set to non-lethal but extremely painful settings. It adapted to candidate movement patterns, learning and adjusting in real time to prevent predictable dodging. We had seen it humble the most arrogant warriors in the galaxy. Riley hit the grid section at a full sprint. The first energy barrier materialized directly in her path. She slid under it like she had done this 1,000 times before. Projectile launchers deployed from the ceiling, She grabbed a piece of debris from the floor without even looking, and threw it with such precision that it jammed the nearest launcher's rotation mechanism. The system compensated, firing from 3 different angles simultaneously. She jumped, planting one foot against the wall and using it to launch herself in a direction that should have been biomechanically impossible for her species, tucking into a rotation that carried her through the gap between energy pulses that existed for maybe a quarter second. She landed in a roll, came up running, and crossed the finish line. 12 seconds. The entire observation deck went silent. Not the kind of silence where people are gathering their thoughts. The kind where reality has just done something so fundamentally wrong that brains need a moment to reboot. 12 seconds, I repeated, because apparently I needed to hear it out loud to believe it. She completed the gauntlet in 12 seconds. Riley stood at the finish line, breathing slightly harder than when she started, but otherwise completely unmarked. No injuries, no burns, no signs of distress. She looked up at the observation window again, and gave a small, casual salute. Then she spoke, her voice carrying clearly through the communication system. So what is next? Because if that is your idea of elite training, I am going to be really disappointed. Gorath made a choking sound. Vexlor's bioluminescence had gone completely dark, which for his species indicated either extreme rage or complete system shock. The other evaluators were frantically checking equipment, convinced that something had malfunctioned, that the trial had somehow been set to beginner mode, that reality had glitched. I just stared at the human girl who had just shattered our station record by more than 2 minutes, who had made our most challenging trial look like a warm-up exercise, who was currently examining her fingernails with the bored expression of someone waiting for something interesting to happen. "Commander," I said carefully, "I believe we may have made an error in our assessment of human capabilities." Vexlor turned to look at me, his optical sensors dilated to maximum. "You think?" That was day 1. The first 12 seconds of what would become the most educational, humbling, and absolutely terrifying 3 weeks of my entire career. Because Riley Hartwell was not done. Not even close, and every single one of us was about to learn exactly what happens when you underestimate a species that evolved on a planet actively trying to kill them for millions of years. But that story, well, that is going to take a bit more explaining. So there we were, 73 species worth of military evaluators, staring at a 16-year-old human girl who had just treated our elite gauntlet like a particularly boring obstacle course at her school gymnasium. I wish I could say we responded with professionalism and grace. I really do. Instead, Vexlor basically had a meltdown. "Rerun the trial," he barked at the technicians, his bioluminescence flickering like a malfunctioning display panel. Obviously something was wrong with the calibration. The defense grid was clearly offline. The thermal sections must have been in diagnostic mode. The pneumatic rams were probably set to training parameters. The chief technician, a Mulvari named Pipkin with more patience than anyone deserved, checked his systems again. "Sir, all systems functioned at 112% of standard operational capacity. If anything, the trial was harder than normal, because the random generation algorithm produced an unusually aggressive pattern sequence. That is impossible." "Yes, sir. I agree, sir. And yet, the data does not lie." Riley, meanwhile, had found a bench near the exit and was sitting there drinking water from a container like she had all the time in the universe. She caught me looking, and waved. Actually waved, like we were friends at some social gathering. Gorath leaned close to me, his voice dropping to a rumble. "What if she is some kind of human super soldier? A genetic experiment? Enhanced with technology we cannot detect?" I had wondered the same thing, so I pulled up her file. Standard human, born in some place called Nevada on Earth. No genetic modifications, no cybernetic enhancements, not even corrective ocular surgery. Her only notable trait was something called competitive gymnastics, and 3 years of mixed martial arts training. I had no idea what either of those meant, but apparently they were considered recreational activities on Earth. Recreation. "She is completely baseline for her species," I said quietly. Gorath's scales rippled in a pattern that indicated existential distress. then her entire species is terrifying, and we should probably surrender now. The next trial was scheduled for the following cycle, but Vexlaw, clearly desperate to restore his worldview, demanded we proceed immediately. This one was the endurance chamber, designed to test physical and mental resilience under extreme stress. Candidates were sealed in a room where gravity fluctuated randomly, temperature swings ranged from near freezing to desert heat, and audio-visual stimuli was specifically calibrated to induce disorientation and panic. Most candidates lasted between 45 minutes to 2 hours before requesting extraction. The challenge was not just surviving, it was maintaining cognitive function and completing increasingly complex problem-solving tasks, while your body and brain were being systematically attacked by the environment. Riley listened to the explanation with that same slight smile, nodded once, and walked into the chamber like she was going to take a nap. 15 minutes in, the gravity increased to 3 times standard. I watched her drop into a lower stance, adjust her breathing pattern, and continue working on the spatial reasoning puzzle projected on the wall without missing a beat. Her movements were slower, obviously, but she compensated with such smooth efficiency that it looked almost easy. 30 minutes in, we hit her with the sensory assault, strobing lights at frequencies known to trigger disorientation in 98% of tested species, audio tones designed to interfere with inner ear function, and pheromone compounds that induced anxiety responses. She closed her eyes, took 3 deep breaths, and kept working. Just blocked it all out, like someone had flipped a switch in her brain. When she needed to see the puzzles, she opened her eyes for exactly as long as necessary, then closed them again. Her hands never stopped moving. "How?" Pipkin whispered, watching his monitors. Her stress hormones barely elevated. Her heart rate is elevated, but stable. She should be vomiting from the sensory input alone. Riley solved 17 puzzles in 90 minutes, then sat down cross-legged in the center of the chamber and appeared to enter some kind of meditative state. She stayed like that for another 30 minutes while the environment continued trying to break her, then stood up and walked to the exit door. She knocked on the door like she was visiting someone's quarters and wanted to be polite. "I think I proved whatever point needs proving," her voice came through the communication system. "Can we move on? This is getting repetitive." Vexlaw's bioluminescence had progressed from dark to a concerning shade of purple. "Extract her, immediately." Over the next 2 weeks, we threw everything at Riley that we had. Combat simulations against holographic opponents 3 times her size. She won by targeting joints and vital areas with surgical precision, survival scenarios in hostile environment suits. She lasted longer than candidates with natural environmental resistances. Team coordination exercises. She somehow managed to get warriors from 6 different species to actually work together effectively, which frankly was more impressive than any physical feat. The turning point came during the 0G combat trial. This was considered the most dangerous test we administered, hand-to-hand fighting in zero gravity against a combat drone programmed with fighting techniques from 40 different species. Candidates wore minimal protective gear and were expected to last at least 5 minutes without being incapacitated. The record was 11 minutes, held by a Rexian shock trooper with 4 arms and exoskeletal armor. Riley studied the drone for exactly 10 seconds before the trial began, her eyes tracking its movement patterns during the demonstration sequence. Then she nodded to herself like she had just confirmed something. "Begin trial," Vexlaw commanded, his voice carrying an edge of desperate hope that maybe, finally, we would see this human fail at something. The drone launched at Riley with 4 simultaneous strikes. She twisted in the zero gravity, using one hand to redirect the drone's momentum while simultaneously positioning herself to strike back. Except she did not strike where the drone was. She struck where it was going to be a full second later. The drone adapted, cycling through combat algorithms at maximum speed. Riley adapted faster. She was not just reacting, she was predicting, reading the drone's pattern recognition and exploiting the microsecond delays in its decision-making process. In zero gravity, where most species struggled with basic orientation, she moved like she had been born in space. 8 minutes in, she had dismantled 3 of the drone's 4 weapon arms using nothing but leverage and targeted strikes. 10 minutes in, she had it in what humans apparently call a submission hold, which should not even be possible against a machine, but somehow she had wedged it into a configuration where its remaining functional limb could not reach her or generate enough force to escape. "Does she have an off switch?" she asked casually, not even breathing hard. "Because I can keep going, but this seems inefficient." Vexlor stared at the scene for a long moment, then did something I had never seen him do in 20 years of service. He admitted defeat. "End trial. She passes." Riley released the drone, oriented herself and kicked off the wall with perfect precision to float directly to the exit. When the gravity re-engaged and she touched down, she turned to look at the observation window one more time. "Thank you for the training opportunity," she said, and this time there was no sarcasm, no smugness, just genuine gratitude. "I learned a lot about how other species approach combat. It was really valuable." That was when I realized something that made my respiratory system do strange things. She had not been showing off. She had not been trying to humiliate us. She had actually been treating this as a learning experience, and every impossible thing she did was just her normal level of effort. Later, I found her in the station's common area, eating something called a sandwich and reading a datapad. I approached carefully, suddenly aware that this small human could probably tie me in knots before I could activate a distress beacon. "May I ask you something?" I said. She looked up and smiled, a genuine friendly expression. "Sure, Evaluator Krill. How is any of this possible for your species?" Riley considered the question, taking a bite of her sandwich and chewing thoughtfully. "Earth is really, really dangerous. Like everything there kind of wants to kill us. Predators, diseases, weather, other humans, sometimes the plants. So we evolved to be adaptable, to learn fast, to push past what seems like our limits because our limits meant death." She paused. "Also, I have 3 younger brothers. You learn combat tactics when you are fighting for bathroom time and the last slice of pizza." I had no idea what pizza was, but the casual way she equated galactic elite military training to sibling rivalry made something click in my understanding. Humans were not super soldiers. They were not enhanced or special. They were just the product of a planet that had spent millions of years teaching them that impossible was just another word for Tuesday. "Your species terrifies me," I said honestly. Riley laughed, a bright sound that somehow made the statement less ominous. "Yeah, we get that a lot. But hey, at least we are on your side, right?" "Right. We were very, very fortunate that humans had decided to join the coalition, instead of conquer it. Because after watching Riley Hartwell break every record we had in 12-second intervals, I had absolutely zero doubt about which way that conflict would have gone." Vexlor approved her for full combat deployment the next cycle. She was the youngest candidate ever certified, and she had done it by making our impossible trials look like a warm-up routine. The reports went up the chain of command, and I heard through unofficial channels that recruitment protocols for human candidates were being completely redesigned. As for me, I requested a transfer to human cultural studies. If a 16-year-old girl could do that much damage to our assumptions, I needed to understand what an entire species of them was capable of. Turns out the answer was basically everything, and they would probably do it while making sarcastic comments and eating sandwiches. Sleep well, Galaxy. The humans are here, and impossible just became their baseline operating procedure.